had the opportunity to kind of go into this a little bit thoroughly here. To put it in a nutshell, you know, what Superbad, you know, actually what we're all saying is that genetics match predictions of the flood model perfectly, right? We were talking about how mitochondrial DNA is inherited exclusively from mothers, but there's 3 young women, married women on the ark who would have repopulated the earth after the flood 4,500 years ago. And what we see is that there's actually 3 major types of human mitochondrial DNA in the world, right? The L, M, N haplogroups. Now, what's also consistent is the Babel dispersion, where one would actually expect sudden formation of, say, several variants of this human mitochondrial DNA, obviously due to the rapid separation and isolation of various groups of people. And the fact that we observe all this, genetics itself proves conclusively that the biblical model, you know, best explains the observable evidence. But Superbad, I want you to kind of explain it a little more thoroughly and adapt, or if you're there, Superbad, you can take over the floor. And I'm also going to share screen here at the LMN map here. So if you want to go ahead there.
I still don't see the map. Can you please?
Yeah, if you want to if you just want to start talking.
This is a very technical thing, so I need the map.
Okay, you let me know if you can see it in here. There you are, brother. Can you see it?
Make it larger. Make it larger, please.
How's that?
Can I? All right.
That's as large as it's going to get, brother. But go ahead, take the floor.
Okay. If you don't understand something, please say immediately, because I don't want anybody to get lost here. Okay? Hello?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, there's some delay.
We hear you, brother.
Okay. Is there echo? I can hear a lot of echo.
No, I think it's okay on your end.
Yeah, and I also getting delays. Okay.
Just make sure, as long as everybody's, you know, appropriately muted here.
Yeah.
There's no background noise. Let me see here. I'm going to try.
I'm muted.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah, I live in Asia. That's why I'm getting delays.
Okay, just take your time. No rush. We're just going to stay silent in order to avoid any type of significant echo. If there's any other issues, you just ask us. Okay, there, Superbad.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Everybody see the map, right? When we use direct measurements of mitochondrial DNA differences, by using direct measurements of mitochondrial DNA differences between people groups from all continents, you will more or less get this map when you line up the differences. Doesn't matter where you're from. You're from Asia or North America, South America. As much samples, DNA samples, mitochondrial DNA samples as possible is the best way to get the haplogroups. This map. This is the haplogroup map. This is based on direct measurements of the haplogroups. I did strip away some few evolutionary bias on how they created their map, but of course I will represent the evolutionist position as well as I can. Okay. Okay. By the way, when I say direct measurements, a mom's mitochondrial DNA is directly compared to her daughter's DNA. Okay, direct comparison, the number of differences, few or a lot. And usually when you compare DNA differences between you and your parent, it's few. But if you compare it with someone else from another part of the world, it would be huge. Okay? So direct measurements. Because I know evolutionists do not do direct measurements. They use their evolutionary bias sometimes to integrate their measurements. And we do it, I do it using direct measurements. Okay, hang on. Okay, when a mom's mitochondrial differences is directly compared to her daughter's DNA and someone else's from another part of the world, you can line them up. And when more and more people groups mitochondrial DNA are gathered and being lined up, this map right here automatically comes out. It doesn't come out if you do not measure enough people's DNA. I forgot the exact figure, but if I'm not mistaken, you need at least 500 people to 1,000. This map here, I think, is 500 to 1,000. Sorry, I forgot the exact number. But when you do that to different people groups around the world, this map will always be like this, more or less. More or less, this is the pattern you get, the primary pattern using direct measurements. Okay, as you can see, there are 3 blue arrows. You guys see it? The 3 blue arrows?
Yes.
Okay, the 3 blue arrows are the L, M, N haplogroups. As you can see, they will always be distinct and unique and easily noticeable when you compare mitochondrial DNA differences between people groups from all continents. Okay? And based on creationist assumptions, I will have to use the word assumption, because if I say this is fact, evolutionists will not be happy at all. So the L, M, N are Noah's daughters-in-law. That is our creationist assumptions. Notice the blue arrow is the L, okay? You guys following? The blue arrow is the L.
Yes, good point.
The blue arrow is the L. The middle blue arrow, there are 3 arrows, right? The middle one is the L, which represents African differences. As you can see, it's in the middle of M and N. And evolutionists interpret that as the starting point which connects M and N. Okay, you following?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, here's the question. Now, why do they interpret it that way? Why do they interpret that the L, the M and N came from the L? Now, according to what I learned in evolutionary literature a long time ago, and I've been updating myself ever since, they interpret it that way because the L, or the African branch, as you can see, sorry, I forgot to say, the letter L is the African branch. Okay? The letter L is the African branch. It has the longest branch or haplogroups. Did you notice? Here, right here, it has the longest one, longest branch. Did you see it?
Yeah.
Yes, we see the longest branch.
Okay. So right now, hang on. As you can see, it spans the length of the entire map, right? So right now we see 2 unique patterns. First, the LMN, Noah's daughters-in-law. Okay, we see that clearly, always like that when you compare genetic differences in
Very
MT.
clear,
Yes. And what is the other thing that we see clearly other than the LMN? The very long African branch. This is how I correctly represent the evolutionary position. I will not just cut that African branch because I am not as biased as evolutionists. So So I represent them very well. That is, so we see two distinct groups, LMN here, African branch here. Okay, you following?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The length of that branch, okay, the African branch. Evolutionists interpret that as a long time scale due to larger genetic differences compared to other haplogroups worldwide. And sorry, wait, hang on. And yeah, and that's also their basis for creating their out of Africa scenario, because the branch, as you can see, is very long. It's different from the rest of the world, meaning more genetic differences and more time. That's their assumption. It's
Can,
only
can I can I interrupt? I'm sorry. I want to share a better picture of this that make it easy for people to talk while you're talking. I want to interrupt. If you'll stop screen sharing, I'll show a picture that'll help you, and then you can go right back to talking. Can I do
think
that?
that picture is enough. I think that picture is enough.
Well, it
Okay,
probably
well,
is. But
Okay, I just stopped the screen share. So Neff, if you want to share yours now, is mine gone?
yeah,
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 it's
it's
gone.
gone. Let me screen share this, and you can keep on talking, because this one really, I think, shows exactly what he's talking about in a better way.
I don't think so. I need to represent the evolutionary position using the other map. I don't want evolutionists to accuse me of bias. So I need
Well,
the other map,
well,
please.
this is based on actual science, but I mean, if you don't want me to share it, I'll stop.
Yeah, no offense, but I need the other map. Thank you.
Okay. Well, the other one doesn't show the names of the groups. That's all. Nobody's going to have a clue what you're talking about looking at that one.
I'm speaking directly to evolutionists here. They'll know the technique. They'll know what I mean. They'll understand what I'm talking about.
You know what? At the end of the day, I think it is a good. It certainly is a good idea that you're doing it in an unbiased way, and I like the fact that you've exposed their bias in that last discussion, because it was funny how Drag admitted that, well, I don't read any of the creationist literature, and they have no idea, what our literature says, which was evident by the fact that he didn't even know our most simple arguments in regards to DNA differences. But aside from that, can you see the image there, Superbad?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Hang on a minute. Yeah, sorry about that. Where was I? Okay, the African branch. Okay. Okay. So the African branch, which is the longest branch, evolutionists interpret as their long time scale due to long due to larger genetic differences compared to other haplogroups worldwide, and that was the basis why they create their out of Africa scenario. Along with that, I don't know if CRISPR is listening, but CRISPR is referring to during the debate the L1, L0, and the other Ls are located on that African branch, as you can see. Can you see the other branches spraying off the African branch? Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
Those are the L1, L0s. The other Ls CRISPR was referring to. So I do not want to misrepresent his position here. So you see it? You guys understand?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I understand what you're talking about, but the problem with the picture is it doesn't show the haplogroups. It's just line drawing.
It does show the haplogroups.
I don't see any H1 or anything.
This map is based on direct measurements of genetic mitochondrial DNA differences. I am talking to evolutionists here who knows this stuff.
Okay, keep going there, Superbad.
Yes. Where was I again? All right. Okay, so CRISPR was
descending, everything coming off the African branch.
sorry. What did you say?
You were on the topic of everything coming off the African branch.
The else, the other haplogroups, the other else. The evolutionist yesterday was, or the other day was referring to. So I want to make sure that I accurately represent his position. I do not want them to accuse me of bias, because I am not as biased as them. Okay. So you can see branches spring away from the primary branch. Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
From the African difference map, the African part. Can you guys see it?
We see it. It just
Yes.
doesn't tell us which haplogroup is what.
It doesn't matter. The L0, L1, L2 that CRISPR was referring to the other day, they're all there. Only there in that long African branch. Okay? So everybody following?
Yeah, keep going, keep going. We're following.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I don't dispute. I don't dispute what he said. Okay. Now, may I get back to the other point I was referring to a while ago?
Yes, you can get that.
We all clearly see the LMN distinct as in unique. You can easily notice everything goes back to the LMNN. And we can also see the long African branch. Okay, the LMN being distinct is the creationist worldview, and the long African branch is the evolutionist worldview. Understand?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So if you're gonna interpret it objectively, and I will not be biased, the evidence can go either way at this point. It's a battle over the same evidence, different interpretations. Evolutionists will not concede that, but they know it is because of their bias. And I am not biased. Now, there are ways to break this tie, and it mostly depends on creationist research, which I'm sure evolutionists will not entertain. To break the tie and to defeat the evolutionist worldview, creationists will have to prove that the massive genetic differences in Africa were not the result of a long time scale. Okay? If we do that, then the entire evolutionary out of Africa collapses. Okay? So we have to prove that those differences in Africa were not the result of a long time scale. Because evolutionists assume huge genetic differences are long time scale, like I said during the debate the other day. Okay, for now, creationists have preliminary data, for example, from the UN, which CRISPR tried to disprove. But since I said it's just only a preliminary data, we are still working on it. The UN is still working on it, that those differences were not due to evolution, but they were due to Africans historically marrying early. And when Africans marry early historically, it will expand the genetic differences in Africa. Okay? If Africans didn't marry early like the rest of the world, then their differences will more or less be the same as non-African mitochondrial DNA differences. Plus, we also have preliminary data. Okay, did you guys get that part? Did you?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, that's one preliminary creationist evidence to debunk the entire evolutionary out of Africa. It is not debunked yet. It is not debunked yet. I will not be biased. I will say it is not debunked yet. Both models are still strong. Okay, so there's another evidence. What was that again? Plus, we also have preliminary data that the Middle East may be the hub. Guys, I'm hearing some problems with the sound. Do you hear it?
I think I heard a little bit of screeching and echoing.
I think you're good now there, Superbad.
Yeah,
Let me
you're good.
change. Let me use my headset. Okay, everything. Can you guys hear me?
Yep,
Yeah,
go
we
ahead.
hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So other than the UN data, creationists also have preliminary evidence or data that the Middle East, sorry, not just creationists, but also secular sources. Plus, we also, and I know evolutionists will accuse creationists of using preliminary data. I am saying yes, we are using preliminary data. Happy? Okay. So we also have evidence of preliminary data that the Middle East may be the hub of genetic diversity more than Africa. Right now, we know that Africa is the largest, has the most genetic diversity compared to the rest of the world. Okay? But the Middle East is also rivaling it. It's preliminary data. We don't know for sure yet. Another hint is that migration patterns in Africa are the same as the Middle East. So which is it? Okay? And if this holds true, this alone could debunk the entire out of Africa scenario of evolutionists. So we will have to wait for a long time before we completely understand the DNA language. We may not know the end results of all of this until we understand the entire DNA language. Biased evolutionists who have a lot at stake in this creation evolution debate will not admit that they have a lot at stake. Even when I was still an evolutionist before, I have already seen this bias. And I didn't care at that time because I wasn't a creationist yet. Okay, let me go back to the point. There's another evidence against the out of Africa. All right? And evolutionists did not include this in their out of Africa because it contradicts their data, which pisses me off. Okay, when you go to the west of Africa, okay, all right, let me explain this clearly. Let's say this is Africa, right? And this is the Middle East. When you move away as far as you can from the Middle East or Africa, genetic diversity decreases. Okay? From any direction, genetic diversity decreases. Now, the same is true. Okay? I was talking about the world. Now, let's go to Africa. It's the same case in Africa. When you go south of Africa, genetic diversity also decreases. Or the west of Africa, genetic diversity also decreases. So what is south of Africa? South of Africa are the L1, L2, L0s that CRISPR was referring to the other day. Now, if genetic, okay, sorry. Okay, it means, okay, okay, at first, right, we use the globe, right, the world map. When you move away from the Middle East of Africa, genetic diversity decreases. But it's also the same with Africa. Move south of Africa, move west of Africa, genetic differences also decreases. It means the center of genetic diversity is either in North, East Africa, or the Western Middle East. So if that is true, and this is preliminary data, again, I admit this is preliminary data. So do not accuse me of bias, evolutionists. If this is true, the center of the genetic diversity worldwide is in Northeast Africa or Western Middle East. So what happens to the other L's CRISPR was referring to the other day? The L1, L0, L3, the other L's he was referring to. They collapse as well. If you know genetics well enough, CRISPR, you would know what I mean. Because those L's that you refer to rely on larger genetic differences. But if those genetic differences are lower, or they decrease as you go south, and since the L's are in the south, then what happens to your L's? Have you thought about that? Okay.
That's a good point. I mean, if evolution were true, we should have seen more haplogroups pop up around the world altogether, and we should have seen more of them pop up in Africa, and we wouldn't see the dependency upon L.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's another point, but I will not use that here. I will not use that here because I do not want to scare all evolutionists.
No, I do.
Well, we're different. I want to represent them more accurately. And what that does
believe what they
is
believe.
jumble that when genetic diversity decreases going south of Africa with the L0, L1, L2 thing, that jumbles the L's that CRISPR is referring to. Reducing their diversity would remove the other L haplogroups. And when his haplogroups are removed, what happens? It leaves the L, M, and N alone. The rest are gone. And when that happens, the map completely then belongs to creationists. And you will have to use your rescuing device, whatever it is, evolutionists, that you have prepared for all contradictions in your theory. All the preliminary data. All right, so that's it. I'm willing to admit my data is incomplete, but are evolutionists willing? I doubt it, because jobs are at stake, careers are at stake, research grants are at stake. That's all I have to say. Any questions?
No, I think that was really good. I really like your unbiased take on it. I think that strikes fear in the hearts of the evolutionists, knowing that, you know, there's so much evidence against their precious theory and science fiction religion, and although some of it is preliminary, like you said, they're just that close to having to admit you know, that their entire theory is wrong and that biblical creation could be true. And as I look at the mitochondrial DNA map of humanity, you know, the three major haplogroups that we're talking about here, they're joined by relatively short line segments, right? And that indicates there's not much difference between them. So this is why we're saying that it's consistent with the three young women on the ark, in that, you know, they came from a world where only a few generations had actually lived before them. But what's also important, and what also fits our model, is that from these three nodes emit dozens of other mitochondrial DNA variants. And now those variants, they're each at a relatively greater distance than the three major haplogroups. So this is actually now consistent with the dispersion at Babel, where there would have been rapid dispersion and isolation of these dozens of groups. Now, since Babel,
Can I say something? Can I say something? After you're done, I forgot to add something.
Yeah, I'll just finish.
After you're done. Sorry for interrupting you.
No problem. I'll just finish what I was saying at Babel, because I think that's important too, because it just further confirms our model. We know that there have been many generations accounting for this, relatively larger distances between the dozens of mitochondrial DNA variants that we actually see today, and the three major haplogroups from which they emerge. So I think that's pretty incredible, because, to be honest with you, the history of humanity, as pointed out in the Bible, is actually in our genome. So what we actually know about the mitochondrial DNA of humans fits the 6,000 year biblical time scale. It explains the three major haplogroups and the relative differences between pre and post flood humanity. So I think, for the most part, even though some of it's preliminary, I still think it's as close to win for biblical creation as we're gonna get. Go ahead.
Okay, I know what evolutionists are gonna say. What is my? How can I prove this? Like I said, it's preliminary. So whatever your reply to this is, it will become a worldview thing. Okay, it will be a tie. I won't care what your reply is. Okay, you get it? One more thing.
Yes.
Lastly. Hey, standing for truth. The map. I need the map. Sorry.
Just 1 second. Go ahead. Nope, just 1 sec. There you are.
Okay, let's pretend for a while that we remove evolutionary bias. Because like I said, I included the evolutionary data here as well. Let's remove the African branch for a while. Let's pretend it's not that long. Okay, you guys following? Following? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we're hearing you.
Yeah, there's an echo.
We hear you.
Hang on. Okay.
Yeah, we hear you fine.
All right. Sorry. It's my my headset has problems too. Okay. Okay. Removing the evolutionary long time scale over there, the African branch, for example. Here, let's cut it here, somewhere here in the middle. It leaves the YEC, the young Earth creationist time scale, as you can see. And this genetic differences map, we can make testable predictions based on this map. If YEC is true, and this is the history of civilizations written within our mitochondrial DNA, we should be able to see and find extra biblical events in this map. An echo of it, an haplogroup of it. Okay, to be specific, a haplogroup of it. You guys understand? A haplogroup, for example. Let's see.
Are you talking about testable and falsifiable predictions here based on? Yep. Okay. Because I noticed in the chat, one of the evolutionists, he said,
I don't care what they say. I don't care what they say.
I'm saying this is good, because they were scoffing at everything we said, saying, "Oh, that's not falsifiable." Well, lo and behold, here's how you falsify it. So I'm glad you're going into this. Go ahead, Superbad.
Of course they have to. Their research grants, government grants are at stake. Their lives are at stake. Their atheism are at stake. And I'm so glad I'm no longer an atheist. I hated them. Okay, here. So with this genetic differences map, we should be able to make testable predictions and falsifiable to make the evolutionists feel better. We should be able to predict extra biblical events within that map. An echo, a haplogroup, for example, during the Roman Empire. Where were the Roman Empire during 2,000 years? They were in the Mediterranean, right? So the YEC timescale should predict an echo of the Roman Empire spraying off from one of the three primary nodes. And do we find that? Yes, we do find one for now. Creationists are still working on the transatlantic slave trade, so I will not use that as evidence. But I will use the Roman Empire echo in the map. It's hard to see here, but there's a branch there, which I think it's this one. This, can you point it out standing? Can you use the mouse to point it out?
I'm not sure. Let me see here. Can you see
There's
the
yeah, put it down, down, here, down, right, up, up. Okay, this one. This is the Mediterranean haplogroup spraying from the primary LMN pattern. As you can see, they're all Mediterranean. And what was happening, let's say this is the young Earth creationist timescale. From this M starting point, from up to here, the edge of that that branch, let's say it represents about, say, 6,000 years. And what is in the 6,000 years, like that? So what is in the middle of 6,000? What is happening 2,000 years ago? Roman Empire, right? So we expect the Roman Empire to branch off, the Mediterranean people to branch off during the Roman Empire. And there it is. Can you see it? It's hard to explain it without the mouse, without the mouse pointing where I want it to point. But okay, but my point is this. We have testable predictions, preliminary fulfilled prediction. And we are still working on the transatlantic slave trade. But we have one. If this reaches 5 extra biblical events found in the mitochondrial DNA differences comparison worldwide, in this map, if we found 5, evolution is dead, whether you like it or not. Right now, we only have 1. We're still working on the transatlantic. So we will not live to see the day this prediction is correct or is true or not. Evolutionists, if you're not going to entertain other views because you don't want the other views, or you think it doesn't use the scientific method, well, we also use the scientific method, but we do not incorporate evolutionary assumptions to it like you do.
Well, thanks for that. They're super bad. I think that's certainly a dismantling of certainly at least everything that CRISPR was saying yesterday. I'm glad that we gave you the floor here to say what you had to say. That was, I would say, the evolutionists should look into those testable predictions as well, being fulfilled, right now, really, as we speak. But to go on to a second topic, I want